Welcome to Weekday Somatics. So as I said yesterday, the from my perspective, the most essential component of the inquiry and what all of the benefits flow from is our presence. So it's easy to get caught up in a lot of different ideas. You've probably noticed that, right? You have an insight, you have some kind of experience, and then theories arise about what that means, how you're going to do something with that, how you're going to repeat it, how that's start projecting fantasy into the future. Oh, I'm going to solve all my problems. It's going to be so great. But then what happens? You run up against the fact that you were mistaken. You don't have that power yet, because life is happening and you're presented with all of your conditioning that you mistakenly thought you'd overcome. So then you're back down. Oh no, I'm depressed, I'm frustrated, I'm overwhelmed, I'm disappointed, I'm discouraged. I don't think I can do it. And you start to doubt, oh, it wasn't even real. Then you have another experience, and you see how it goes round and round, up and down. So we can completely subvert that. This is a subversive activity. We can subvert the up and down. So take a look in your life and see how it's been characterized by up and down. I got it, I don't. Got it. I'm winning, I'm losing. I like it, I don't like it. I feel good, I feel bad. Now that's no kind of foundation for any kind of stability, at least. So if we value stability, which we do because we're here, then we come first to this recognition of the stillness. And notice that you are aware of the stillness. So up to a certain point in our lives, we're not aware that we're aware of the stillness. The stillness, in retrospect, we become aware that we were always aware, but up to a certain point, we're not consciously aware of the stillness. The stillness takes us over at night when we sleep in deep sleep. but we are not consciously aware. We can be consciously aware. So that's first and foremost, I propose that you will get maximum benefits, the most rapid benefits, the most consistent benefits in all areas of your life if you remain true to this as your foundation. And of course, if that's not clear to you, then you can bring that up in the Q&A. That will be a good thing to do. For those who don't have access to the Q&A, I'm not sure how best to support that. Ultimately, let me rephrase that. Ultimately, the real support exists within you. So you'll notice that the answers always have to be discovered within yourself. Even if it comes from outside, it has to connect. That external answer has to connect with the inner answer, the inner recognition before it's true for you, before it's meaningful, before it holds real value for you. So ultimately, the real answer already exists within you. And that's the shortcut. Is why wait? Just go directly to the answer within you. Maybe many of us don't yet have full confidence in that, but try it out. You know, the technique that I shared yesterday, which we could call prayer, offers us that. It's a direct way to, we can ask the question and then receive the answer directly from within. It's very fast. So let's find a posture that we can inhabit for the next 30 minutes, where we have confidence that we can remain anchored in this awareness of the stillness. And whatever that means for you, be honest about it. Because I really truly mean that. The real benefits come from this anchor, this recognition. And if the doubts come, I'm not sure, is this really it? Is this the silence that he's talking about? How can I know? That's okay. That's no problem. Just don't turn it into a problem by giving energy to the doubts. Instead, you can, here's a little trick, a little game. When the doubt comes, flip it into a prayer to discover the answer within, directly, presently. So just trust that the answer already exists. And this will point you directly to the same stillness, the same silence, because that's where the answer arises from. So when I say that we're going to, when I talk about stillness, it's not constrained by, it's not dictated by, there's no condition of bodily stillness. You can recognize and experience the stillness even in activity, even if there's movement in the body. However, for this inquiry, it will be very helpful for all of the inquiries, unless I say otherwise. It's very helpful to allow the body to be physically still, because it's one of the pathways that we are utilizing for the inquiry. It's a pathway. It becomes more familiar the more you explore it. And So at first it's unfamiliar. You don't know how to do that. It seems uncomfortable. It seems scary. It seems difficult. It seems impossible. But you explore it and be open to it. Just be open to the possibility that this really is actually possible for you. And then just explore from there. Trust that it's actually possible for you. The body can become physically still. And that the body can become physically still in a restful, restorative, rejuvenative way. This is truly possible for you. I am certain of it. It's possible for you that you can discover this stillness expressed through the body as stillness that is restful, restorative, and rejuvenative. In order to discover that, you have to become aware of the habits of strain, because if you are focused on trying to be still, what you will be doing is energizing the habitual pathways. Now, those are the familiar pathways. Those are the pathways of strain, the pathways of self-effort, the pathways of resistance, the pathways of fear, the pathways of anxiety, the pathways of discouragement. They're all very familiar to you. What I'm saying, and this is such an important point. All possibilities exist within you. All possibilities exist within you. I'll say it again. All possibilities exist within you. Can you really let that in? Just let that resonate within you. All possibilities exist within. All possibilities exist within. All possibilities. Now, start to look and see from this stillness, this silence, recognize that all truly, you can see this now. All possibilities exist within. All possibilities are here. All possibilities. Now, notice what happens as soon as I propose that. All possibilities exist. Notice where your attention goes. This is important. Notice, where does the attention go? Now, if you really observe, you'll see I should say, some of you, this will not be true, because some of you have enough faith in this now. You've cultivated the new pathways, so you'll notice something different. And I'll talk about that momentarily. Many of you will observe, if you're watching carefully, what you'll see. So we'll do it again momentarily, but I'll say it and then we'll do it and you can see. When I propose that all possibilities exist within, your attention goes to the habit of arguing, the habit of rejection, the habit of limitation, the habit of negativity. Immediately, like a knee-jerk reaction, your attention goes, and you don't even recognize it, which is why I'm bringing your attention to this important point, because this point will change your life when you recognize this, when you really see this. So observe carefully, because this is a very, very, very important point. So I'm gonna say it again, and then I want you to really observe where your attention goes. Just watch. Notice that you can be aware of this. So I want you to really receive what I'm saying. Really let it in, and then notice what happens. Notice the reaction. All possibilities exist within. I'll take that a step further. All possibilities exist within, and all possibilities are completely open to you to experience now. Now, there may be infinitely many reactions, but there are three sort of broad categories. So one of them I already described. You may have observed this within yourself. So just notice if that's the case, which is immediately going to the negative reaction, indulging the usual habit of rejection, argumentativeness. So what does that look like? Well, I'm not so sure about all possibilities. What does he really mean? Maybe he means some possibilities, but surely not all possibilities, because I can't fly like Superman. So there's argumentativeness. Now, you may be right, you may be wrong, it doesn't matter. The point is, just see what happens, just observe. Another possibility is that you may have cultivated enough faith through exploration or whatever other means so that you recognize that that statement, that proposal opens you up. It points you to this recognition of the many possibilities. So if you've observed that, that's wonderful. That's fantastic. It's a very good sign, because when that happens, then you know that you're not so locked into the old habits anymore. You're not so committed. You've seen through a lot of it. You've recognized that none of that satisfied you. Why bother energizing it? Even if it's true, why bother? Why am I going to bother giving energy to that negativity, that pain, that struggle, all of that? Why will I bother doing that? So that's wonderful if you recognize that your reaction is to just be open to that possibility, to recognize, yes, there are many possibilities. There's a third category. Third category is that it might actually point you even more intimately to recognize the stillness. The stillness is so complete. Stillness is so complete, it doesn't care. Possibilities or no possibilities, good possibilities, bad possibilities. It's irrelevant because the stillness is complete. All possibilities exist within you. All possibilities. Including the possibility of discovering restful stillness within the body, even if you have stories about your past, about how painful it's been, about how hard it's been, about how impossible it's been, about how there are no other possibilities, about how it's too late for you. All of these stories, regardless of those stories, this possibility is true. It really is true. This possibility of discovering restful stillness in the physical body. The physical body can be so completely surrendered. And then here's another possibility. The thoughts can be surrendered. The thoughts can become still. And another possibility is that a gentle, loving aliveness can be enlivened in your consciousness, so that that is your experience, so that you experience buoyancy at all levels, ease, regardless of your stories of the past. This is possible. So there are two things that I would like to explore today. We'll see. I can manage that. I don't know. We'll start with the dog. So want to explore the barking dog. Some of you will connect with this specific scenario, and some of you will have to translate it. I'll see if I can assist you in translating it into something that you can connect with in your experience. "20 years ago, I was practicing transcendental meditation. And every time, it seems at least, every time I would sit down, close my eyes, and I had the intention, this is going to be a wonderful meditation. It's going to be very profound, restorative. I'd sit and I'd close my eyes. And then I heard, woof, 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 woof. And I became agitated. This agitation grew and grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And the more I tried, the more it grew. I wanted to leap out of my own skin. I felt angry, and not just angry, enraged. I had these violent fantasies in which I was somehow gaining control over the situation. I'm going to show them what's wrong with these people locking their dogs in the apartment all day. Of course, the dog's going to bark, and then I come back around and say, it's the dog's fault. What's wrong with that dog? I'll show all of them. It wasn't just the dog, by the way. And this is where maybe I can help translate it for you if you don't connect with the dog story. It wasn't just the dog, it was the clock too. I would sit there, and if the dog wasn't barking, the clock was ticking. And if the dog wasn't barking and the clock wasn't ticking, I mean, the clock was ticking, but if I wasn't annoyed by the clock ticking, it was the neighbor, some neighbor was playing music, or some neighbor was shouting. Years later, I had children. I had moved to a cabin in the woods. I didn't have the problem with neighbors anymore, but now I had children. Always crying inconvenient times. So the question is this. And well, let me translate this a few more ways, okay? Because I want to make it clear. This this is actually a generalized thing. So I want you to imagine that you walk into you're oh, no, here we go. You're on an airplane, and there's a baby crying right behind you. Or imagine that you walk into a room, and you're in a good mood, and then you walk into the room, and you choose who it is. It could be your spouse, or your friend, or your parents, or your children, or your whoever. It's irrelevant actually who it is. You'll see why in a moment. But imagine whoever it is, and they start to argue with you. Notice what happens within yourself. Notice what you're doing now. Imagine they say, you're wrong, you're bad, you should be ashamed of yourself. I'm so disappointed in you. I'm angry with you. You're careless. You're inconsiderate. You're rude. You're stupid on top of all of it. You can't even do anything right. So what's the point of all of this? The point of all of this is to recognize how it is that we have wrongly believed that we are victims of circumstance, that we are victims of something that is happening outside of ourselves. You know, it's not hard to find support for that belief. The world is largely constructed around that, this bizarre idea of justice. But ask yourself this question: is that any way to live? Is it really a way? Is it actually a good way to live? Is it satisfying? Are you happy with that way of living? Yeah, I think that's probably a rhetorical question. Obviously, you're not happy with it. I'm not happy with it. Nobody's happy with being a victim. So we can waste a lifetime trying to get justice, trying to set it right, figuring out who to blame. Or here's another possibility. Remember, all possibilities exist within you. This one too exists within you. It's up to you to choose it, though. This possibility is to recognize that I am not a victim. There is no possibility of me being victimized. There's no possibility of anything or anyone harming me in any way. Ooh. Now, if that doesn't trigger some uh, resistance, some argumentativeness, I don't know what will. And if it doesn't, then good for you. But if it triggers some argumentativeness, some resistance, then take a look at that. Observe how familiar is that resistance, that argumentativeness. I know the answer to that. You know the answer to that. It's very, very familiar. It's who you've identified as. Now, here's some good news. It's never, never too late to abandon a mistake. Even if that mistake has been some false identity that you've clung to your entire life, it's not too late. You can drop it now. You can change direction right now, because all possibilities exist within you. All possibilities exist in equal proportion within you. They're all equally available. None is greater or lesser. None is harder or easier. They're all equally accessible. Some you're just in the habit of reaching for. So I want you to imagine this scenario, whatever it is for you, whether it's the barking dog or the clock that's ticking or the neighbor playing music you don't like or the children crying or the whatever. Oh, it could be anything, by the way. I mean, really anything. It could be what you call some kind of illness, including what you call a contagious disease. Yeah, if if the other thing didn't provoke argumentativeness, then that sure should. I want you to see that nothing can harm you. Nothing can harm you. There's no possibility of it. This isn't a belief. This is truth. This is what something you can actually see. If you're willing, you can see it right now. Now, how can you see this? Well, many ways. One way that I'm proposing is just recognize that there's a stillness that is the most intimate experience of yourself. See that everything else comes and goes. Even throughout the course of just a single day, all of it comes and goes. You wake up and it's not there, and then you pick it up, piece it back together. But the pieces kind of fall away, and then you pick them back up throughout the course of a day. Now observe how much effort is required to cling to it, to hold on to it. There's an identity. I'm the sort of person who's annoyed by the barking dog. Barking dogs are a problem for me. I can't experience silence when there's a barking dog. I'm that sort of person. I'm the sort of person who can't experience silence when there's a barking dog. I'm the sort of person who can't be okay when there's a barking dog. I'm the sort of person who's victimized by barking dogs. These are all things that you believe to be true. Now, how do you believe that these are true? What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look. How are you believing that presently? I want you to imagine the scenario, whether it's the barking dog or whatever. Whether it's something that seems presently real to you, or if it's just some fantasy that you're imagining, it doesn't matter. Guess what? It's all fantasy. So why not just imagine the fantasy? If it provokes this for you, provokes the reaction, provokes the argumentativeness, provokes the habits, the clinging, the identification with the pain, the suffering, the misery, the limitation, well, good news. There's no there. The thing you thought was the real you, it's not the real you. So just the fantasy you is just as good. It's all fantasy you. So observe now. Imagine this scenario playing. Observe your habits. You don't have to feel them right now in the fullness of their reactivity, their rage, their whatever. You don't have to feel you don't have to experience that intensity, but just you can observe it. You can observe the habit because it's there. It's a habit. It's something. It's not hard to find. You recognize it. It's familiar. So just observe that. Imagine the scenario, the barking dog, the whatever. Notice what you do. Notice it. Notice the clinging. Notice the way in which you seek to protect yourself, the way in which you seek to cling to this false identity, this identity that's bound up. There's a linchpin to it. It's a sensation. The whole constellation involves more than that. The constellation involves the thoughts, the memories, the images. It also involves the sensation. It's the linchpin. Look at the sensation. You say this sensation is absolutely unbearable, absolutely impossible to endure. I must go to war with it. I have to, I have to, I have to. Well, now tell the deeper truth. What you're saying is, I am that, I am that, I am that, I am that, I am that sensation. That's how I know that I exist. If I don't have that sensation, who am I? I don't know. I'm terrified of that. I'll cling to that sensation. I will fight for it to death. I'm the sort of person who can't experience peace when there's a barking dog. I can't be okay when there's a barking dog. Why? Because there's that sensation. Now look at the sensation. And see that the sensation is a lie. It's a total lie. What's the reality? The reality is that you are gripping. That's it. You're gripping at the idea of the sensation. You're gripping at the memory of the sensation. You're notice what's happening here is important. It's important. It's the same thing that we started from. Observe how you, it's because what I'm saying now is the same thing I was saying before, just using different words. I'm pointing to the same thing. All possibilities exist within you now. All possibilities equally exist within you now. It's only a matter of where you are choosing to give your attention. So notice where you give your attention. When I say this is what's happening, observe, there is no actual sensation. You're just clinging to the memory of the sensation. You're clinging to a false identity. Notice where your attention goes. It goes, for 99% of people, it goes to the argumentativeness. You immediately it's a knee-jerk reaction. You begin to argue for the limitation. You begin to argue for the habit. You begin to argue for the false identity. I say, you are not a victim. There's nothing happening. There's no problem. There's nothing outside of you that can harm you at all. That includes not only barking dogs, not only sounds, not only all of that, but it also includes the so-called sensations that you're so concerned about. None of it can harm you. None of it. No thought can harm you. No memory can harm you. And that maybe seems obvious but for many of us, it's not obvious. How many people are struggling with memories? The memory surfaces and they run away. The memory surfaces and they have to drink themselves into a stupor. So this is an important thing to recognize, that there is nothing that can harm you. You cannot be a victim of anything. So start to take a look and see there's a clinging, a grasping, or a armoring. It's all the same thing. It's all, I'm using those words interchangeably, but maybe one works better for you in the moment. It's self-effort. It's false, but it appears real because it seems as though if I squeeze, contract, that somehow this is real now. So play with this. Now, at first, anything is possible, okay? But there are certain patterns. So be aware that there's a possibility, that maybe even a likelihood, that at first you will perceive a kind of squeezing, like you're being squeezed, or will seem maybe uncomfortable to you. Might provoke like almost to the verge of panic if you let it. So just be very aware, and don't let it build up. Let it remain very subtle, very gentle. Just observe within yourself, within the physical sensations, but at a very, very, very subtle level. Notice how from this stillness, there's this disturbance. Notice how that disturbance then, if you allow it, it snowballs. So it's like an oyster. It's a little grain of sand, and then it produces irritation. So the oyster produces this mineral, surrounds it, so it's smoother, but then it's still irritating, so it keeps producing more, and eventually we have a pearl. Well, that's exactly what's happening here, except that we don't recognize that it's a pearl. We don't recognize its divine perfection and beauty. We think that this is a nightmare. We think it's, oh my God, I'm being tortured by this dog barking at me. So we want to become subtler and subtler. Let the awareness become very subtle so that you can just start to see the subtle disturbance, the subtle agitation that arises from stillness. If we let it snowball, then it seems very hard, very painful, very scary, just because we have all of these beliefs and habits that are associated with it at that level. Once it's at a grosser level, there's so many things attached to it that it's more of a process to undo at that level. So let's keep it subtler if possible. Now, if you at first notice the squeezing or intensity, just tune into the natural breath. Notice how you're holding the breath. Notice how you're introducing unnatural turns to the breath. Don't control the breath. Just let the breath become subtle and relaxed. Notice if you're squeezing around the eyes, clenching the jaw, tensing in the abdomen, wherever, squeezing the hands, just soften. Now notice that in this softness, in this stillness, in this awareness, all of this experience is passing through you. All of it is just passing through. The sound is passing through, the vibrations are passing through, the habits are passing through, the thoughts are passing through, the uncontrolled breath is passing through. Let the forehead be soft, let the throat be soft, let the whole body be as soft as possible so that you can experience your body as transparency. And then notice that all the experiences are just passing through this transparency. There's nothing for them to latch on to. There's nothing to latch on to them. And again, imagine the scenario, the dog barking or whatever it is, and notice that it's possible for you to remain this transparency. There's no actual requirement that you must indulge the habit of gripping, armoring, protecting, imagining, identifying, or any of the rest of it. There's no requirement whatsoever for that. Now, everybody's going to have a different allowance for that initially. So some of you will immediately recognize the fullness of what I'm pointing to, and this will be wonderful for you. This is, if you once you recognize this, you now have the answer to all your problems. There's no problem that this is not the answer to. When this clicks for you, it's very, very clear that there is no possibility of anything touching you. There's no possibility of any problem. And you become, well, when you remain true to it. So then the next step is remain true to it. You have to put it into practice in your life, because you don't go through your whole life with your eyes closed, sitting perfectly still or lying perfectly still. You are engaged in your life. So then the real test is, can you bring this stillness into your life? Can you bring this recognition of your perfection into this life? Can you bring your awareness of the perfection of all things into this life? Can you bring this awareness of the absolute unity of all that is, including yourself, into this life? That's the next step. It's totally possible. Then your whole life becomes enlivened. The qualities of unconditional love is enlivened in your life, because why? You're choosing that. You see, that's what I'm pointing to. You were unconsciously choosing to indulge the habit of suffering, of contraction. When you recognize that's totally unnecessary, that your actual nature is totally open, free, still, peaceful, loving, unconditionally, transparent, then you can choose to bring that awareness into your life, so that your life, that quality is enlivened in your life. It's a choice. If you don't choose it, then you're not choosing it. Then the momentum of the old habits continues. But you choose this over and over and over, it becomes very easy, because that new habit is formed. Now, if it's not yet clear to you, maybe you have, well, for sure, if you've really engaged with what I'm pointing to here in this inquiry, if you're really testing it for yourself, if you're allowing yourself to be restfully still within the body, if you're surrendering your impulses to grasp or grip, cling, armor, protect, defend, argue, if you're just surrendering all of that, if you have that degree of faith and courage that you're willing to surrender, then for sure, there's no doubt whatsoever, for sure, because I'm just pointing to something, for sure, you recognize this to some degree. For sure, something has changed. There's no question about it. It's definitely something has shifted, something, you've recognized something. There's no way it couldn't be that way. As long as you have looked in the way that I've described, as long as you're choosing to surrender all of the compulsive habits just for this inquiry, just for this 30 minutes or 50 minutes or whatever it's been, I don't know. Then it's for sure there's a greater clarity. Recognize that. Look now, just acknowledge that and give gratitude for that. Thank you. Thank you for this opening. Thank you for this clarity. Now, may I choose to remain true to this. May I choose to enliven this in my life. May I choose peace. May I choose to recognize the unbelievable power and grace that resides within this stillness that I am one with, so that I may be a beacon of that light, that clarity in my world, in my life, so that I might remain true to that and no longer cling to the false identities, This is a choice. We have to make this choice. Otherwise, it's going to be a slow and difficult path. But if we make the choice, then we're instantly the recipients of this perfect grace. So we will begin to transition consciously from this formal inquiry. If your eyes have been closed, then remember to open them with awareness so that it's a smooth transition and you don't disturb anything. Remain aware of this stillness. Remain aware of the infinite field of possibilities that exists within you, here and now, always. Remain aware of your choice to remain true. Remain aware of the effortlessness of being true. It requires effort to lie, but it's effortless to be true. So remain aware of that. Remain aware of that. And if your eyes have been closed, at your own time, begin to slowly explore opening them and see that as you open the eyes, this stillness and this radiance, this truth that's within you, this infinite field of possibility can shine forth into your world. This is a more powerful position than the position that most of us normally inhabit when we have eyes open. When our eyes are open, typically we move outward, grasping for things. We think something out there is going to fulfill us, or something out there is going to harm us. So we're looking outward, grasping outward, protecting against the outward. But here's a different position. This is the position of recognizing this stillness as my fundamental nature, recognizing that this is the source from which everything is emanating. Everything is arising from this source. Notice that you can actually have this experience of yourself here. Talk about being here now. What does that mean? Notice what it means. Notice where here now is. It's here now. It's a location. Doesn't. It's a location and it's not a location. Okay. But you can actually, rather than letting it just be some vague thing, notice that it's pointing to a specific recognition. Remain true to this, and you start to recognize that this is the stability. Everything is emanating from here. So now you can really truly recognize that you are not a victim. Whatever's happening supposedly out there, it's an emanation from here. Where's the power? The power is here. Power is here. So why move outside of that? Why reach outside of that? Why destabilize yourself? Remain still and restful here. Perfect equilibrium. And from here, every possibility is perfectly accessible. I don't have to overreach. I don't have to strain, because the possibilities aren't way over there. The possibilities are right here. All I have to do is just gently direct the attention and just remain aware. Just remain aware, so that I'm aware of this stillness here. I'm aware of this presence here. I'm aware that I am one with this, so that when I notice those habits arising, the pull is a that pull, that habit actually becomes a pointer pointing to here. It's a reminder. Oh yes, Yes. So then rather than energizing that, I have a choice. The choice is, oh, yeah, I recognize that. That's not what I want. Remain still. New possibility arises. Ah, yes. So this has gone a little bit longer than I anticipated. For those who are watching the recording, thank you for joining. And let me just say sincerely, I mean that. Thank you. Thank you for your participation. Just notice that there's a richness to your participation, and that richness is enlivening that quality of richness in the world. So I sincerely thank you for your participation. It's significant, and so I honor you. I honor your willingness to be here. Thank you.